Hygiene in the American Wild West was pretty subpar. Pioneers and settlers venturing across the North American terrain faced extreme weather and challenging landscapes, making it difficult to find suitable bathing spots. Alongside their journey to new territories, there was a constant struggle to locate clean water, a necessity for survival. In such circumstances, the priorities leaned heavily towards staying alive rather than staying clean. Spending days or even weeks without a proper bath, living in close quarters, and lacking proper restroom facilities all contributed to a life in the Wild West marked by unpleasant odors, widespread illnesses, and generally grim living conditions. Beds often had seam squirrels. Beds in the American West were often made of straw and hay. And while not all were fashioned this way, many were. Infrequently changed bedding led to infestations by various pests, including lice known as seam squirrels. These critters were just one of the many bothersome insects that made life in the Wild West rather unhygienic. Flies were notorious for infiltrating food supplies and human waste, while mosquitoes swarmed into poorly insulated buildings. With hardly any window screens, insects freely traveled between homes and outhouses, carrying remnants of their journey, making sanitation a challenge. Outhouses were home to bugs and odors. Outhouses served as a fixture of frontier living, providing a necessary facility for many who didn't have indoor plumbing. They were strategically placed near homes and settlements for convenience and safety reasons. Typically, these structures consisted of a wooden framework positioned over a dug hole. When one hole filled up, it was covered, and a new one was dug nearby, maintaining a continuous cycle. However, these outhouses often emitted unpleasant odors that led people to resort to using substances like lye or lime to mask the smell. Bugs were a constant presence, with flies and black widow spiders being common inhabitants. The latter posed a risk of biting individuals as they sat on the wooden seats to do their business. With no modern-style toilet paper available, people made do with whatever materials were at hand, such as leaves, corn cobs, or grass. Clean water was hard to come by. Accessing clean water posed a challenge in the Wild West era. While water was vital for survival, finding it in a pristine state wasn't straightforward. The outhouses constructed by nearby homesteads were a hidden source of contamination, unknowingly affecting the quality of water for individuals downstream. Stagnant water served as a breeding ground for flies and other insects, which left behind waste as they hovered over puddles. In efforts to conserve water, people refrained from washing dishes and clothes, opting to reuse bath water for multiple purposes. It wasn't uncommon for entire families to share the same tub of water, often a weekly luxury if luck was on their side. Though rarely, soap was made from animal fats or plants. Soap in the past was typically crafted either from animal fat or plants, though not everyone made or used it. In those days, body odor was considered a natural aspect of life. Similarly, the prevailing belief that excessive cleanliness might expose pores to germs and diseases didn't encourage regular bathing practices. Dental care frequently involved the removal of teeth. In the past, maintaining oral health often boiled down to tooth extraction as there were no toothbrushes. When individuals encountered tooth problems, the usual solution was simply extraction. Individuals sought help from barbers or even blacksmiths, who would use tools resembling pliers to extract a sore tooth. There wasn't any pain relief applied, although whiskey was occasionally used to alleviate some discomfort. Although there were some alternatives available to prevent tooth extraction, people generally didn't prioritize oral hygiene. At certain stagecoach stops and public places, individuals would resort to using a communal toothbrush and often used knives to remove food stuck in their teeth. Shared towels were utilized to clean away beer foam. In the Wild West bars, instead of stools, they often had rails at the bottom for leaning and spittoons. On the bar's top, there might have been a cuspidor, an extra rail, or a row of hooks. These hooks and rails were meant to hold towels that patrons utilized to wipe away beer foam from their mouths. These communal towels were shared among numerous customers, inadvertently aiding the spread of germs and diseases during their use. Spitting was so common that it was made illegal. Spitting was such a widespread habit that it eventually had to be prohibited. In the saloons scattered across the western frontier, Men commonly spat tobacco onto the floor, which was lined with spittoons and cuspidors near the bar. Despite efforts to contain the spit with sawdust, this method proved problematic as respiratory illnesses like pneumonia and tuberculosis spread rapidly. Sawdust, serving as a breeding ground for germs, exacerbated the issue, especially considering that saloons often provided sleeping quarters for travelers amidst the unsanitary conditions. To curb this excessive spitting, some establishments attempted to enforce bans on the practice. Regulations were put in place, forbidding spitting on train platforms and stations, with violations carrying hefty penalties of a $500 fine, a year-long imprisonment, or both. Cholera and various other illnesses were rampant. Cholera and various diseases spread uncontrollably during the era. Given that activities like laundry, plumbing, and dishwashing occurred in water also used for drinking, outbreaks of illness were common in camps and settlements across the American West. Cholera, in particular, took a heavy toll, claiming the lives of both settlers and native groups. In the 19th century, numerous cholera outbreaks among Mormon migrants resulted in the deaths of thousands, although the precise toll remains unknown. Within the Mormon community, cholera was perceived as a divine punishment and a trial of faith. It was just one of the diseases responsible for devastating Native American populations. The disease not only affected overland trails but also impacted tribal communities and nomadic Indian groups, although its impact on native lives fell short in comparison to smallpox. However, in 1873, good health was short-lived in at least 18 states and territories. Dr. J. B. Van Velsen, in the Dakota Territory, attributed the arrival of cholera in Yankton, the territorial capital, to Russian immigrants. He depicted them as being from the lower classes, filthy in persons and habits. Nevertheless, he might not have been aware that the spread of cholera was part of a larger epidemic at the time. Women were more hygienic than men. Women tended to maintain better hygiene practices compared to men in the Wild West era. While men like cowboys and soldiers often went extended periods without bathing, opting for occasional dips in nearby streams or rivers, women had a different routine. They typically washed their faces each morning. However, due to the lack of privacy and a sense of modesty, their hygiene practices generally didn't extend beyond basic face and hand washing. Both cowboys and soldiers frequently went without washing their clothes for long stretches, resorting to laundering them in streams or rivers when they did get the chance.